Who cares?
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to At the Inn of the Missing Minstrel. This week, we're going to sit down and discuss what happens when a band replaces a key member. This happens all the time, as we were just discussing in our pre-show. It's going to be a deep well. We only have an hour here today because one of us has to get going. Family commitments, and I dig it because it actually kind of fits in with what we have going on here. You got a little singer in your midst there, Mikey.
We do. My daughter auditioned for this our like Camden's choir, and she auditioned back in June. She made it on, so they have a recital today. It's their first one, so yeah, I'm excited. I'm proud. It's cool. It's pretty awesome, and yeah, the musical gene has been passed down from me to her. So yeah, I love it.
Is Joe going to do what I used to do in choir and just mouth the words without singing anything?
No, she'll. No, she'll actually sing.
I lost the tune. I was just like, oh my god, I don't know what notes to sing, so I just went. It was only for one small part of the song.
That's funny.
Well, there's like 40 of us. No one's gonna know.
In her defense, they've only had one practice, and they're doing a short one today, a short recital today. So it hasn't been a lot of time and they're doing 5 songs, and it's kind of like,
oh boy.
Yeah, we're like, do you know all the lyrics? She's like, oh yeah, okay,
good for her.
Yeah,
no, I've had all of my daughters have gone through choir, and my son is in band, so we got some music over here, and I, of course, most famously play the stereo. So
that's Hey, someone's got to do it, Matt. Someone has to be that person that does that.
You know, if you give me a big enough bucket, I can carry a tune.
I thought there was a flute joke coming in.
I was thinking the same thing.
No, I don't know what you heard, but that's not my name on the restroom wall.
Boy,
Skin Flute Fridays or what?
There you go.
Oh, no, I had a buddy that did that on Tuesdays, but that's a whole other story.
All right.
Anyway, boys, let's pitter patter, let's get at her.
Yeah.
So, bands have a tendency to miss members here and there, and I'm gonna get it out of the way right off the bat because I know it's coming.
Not for me. It's not.
We're not gonna turn this into 55 and a half minutes of this band because I got a couple we got to talk about. But first up, right off the bat, Cliff Burton and Metallica replaced with Jason Newsted. Mm-hmm. Go.
I don't think that's the better replacement. There's a better replacement with Metallica than Jason Newsted, and that would be Kirk Hammett replacing Dave Mustaine. Arguably, Dave Mustaine is the better guitarist, but you can't have a toxic seed in a band that you're trying to succeed with. But
3 alphas don't work. Come on, man.
No, but I guess to get back to your point, it's a polarizing topic with Jason Newsted replacing Cliff Burton so early after his death, because it was within a month, I think, that they replaced him.
6 weeks he was in the band.
6 weeks? Okay, so you don't grieve yet. Like, you haven't been able to grieve.
No.
So
that's what Justice was, and that's why that album sucks.
Yeah.
Well,
honestly, it doesn't suck. It has some of their best written songs ever.
Another thing,
we're fighting.
Yeah, well, every time we talk about this band, this comes up, and I'm sure that there's going to be a severe beating on October the 2nd, or we're all going to get arrested for fighting in a parking lot. I'm going to take issue, though. I think Hammett is a much better guitarist than Mustaine. Much better.
He's a much better guitarist for Metallica. Technically, Mustaine is one of the best lead guitarists ever in the history of metal. You can't have him not have his way, though. It's not in Dave Mustaine's DNA to listen to somebody else because he's so, I don't want to say closed-minded, but he's so focused on what he wants to write that look at how many members Megadeth has had in the past. How many guitarists have they had? He just keeps
firing. I don't think we can count that high.
You can't be with Dave Mustaine for too long without going crazy, honestly, because he's such a force of what he wants to do that he doesn't listen to anyone else, right? So if he was less of an alpha, I think Metallica would actually be a better band with Dave Mustaine in him in the long run. If he was less of an alpha, if he was more, I can just play guitar, tell me what to do. Here's a couple riffs that I've written. But like,
well, then it'd be exactly the same almost then, because it's the Hetfield.
No, Dave Mustaine's a much better technical guitarist than Kirk Hammett is. Look at his solo work, like
right.
so. But
I don't know. Speed
but
kills.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Dave's got no feel. It's all like, I'm just gonna show you what I can do and do all these weird spider chords and fucked up scales and shit.
I kind of disagree with that. I think he does have feel. I think he just chooses to play thrashy all the time. I think some of his solo work, like on Rust in Peace, it's some of the best solo work in heavy metal guitar. Like on Hangar 18 and Tornado of Souls, like those two are some of the greatest solos ever. Although I'm pretty sure Marty Friedman does that one.
I was going to say Marty did most of those.
Yeah, which is another topic.
Right, there's another topic. But that's not... Anyways, but the Cliff Burton piece, he's the irreplaceable object.
Yeah.
No matter who they got to replace that seat in the band would have been the wrong choice.
Well, I think Rob is a better replacement than Jason.
I'm a Jason guy. I love Jason. Jason's awesome.
I have no problem with Jason. So let me just back this up just a hair. Can we all agree that even though the opinions on why differ, Kirk replacing Dave was better for the band as a whole?
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
And because he was passive and just say, okay, you want me to play a solo here? Okay, I'll just do that.
Well, in the early works, like for Kill 'Em All, he just played all of Dave's solos basically, right? But when he started writing his own solos for Ride the Lightning Master and Justice for All, and even probably one of the most famous solos is the Unforgiven solo that's Kirk Hammett's brainchild, right? Like he gave tenderness and a feeling and soul into those solos. It's been lost honestly over the last 3 albums because I just don't think he cares anymore to like really put that passion into his work, to be perfectly honest.
Well, you know how the solos were done for the new album?
Oh God.
Do you really want to know? It might.
Did he just did a bunch of licks and then they just like Spider-Man them together or like fuse them together?
He recorded 30 solos and Lars put them into songs.
Oh, for Christ's sakes.
Ow.
Yeah.
That's an interesting.
That's why they're so bad.
And I think it, I think that's where I was headed with that. I think that's why it seems so disjointed on that album when the solo kicks in, because it wasn't a main part of the song.
There's no flow to it, right?
Yeah, with the Cliff Burton thing.
Yes,
I think on the head where he's the irreplaceable object because the sound of the band changed drastically between Master of Puppets. And
turn that bass knob down. Let's get it down to 0, right?
Oh, it's not even that though. It's just the willingness to explore music to its full potential kind of was lost on Metallica. Like they basically made the Black Album, for lack of better words, kind of for the masses instead of for themselves.
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I wonder how Cliff would have dealt with Bob Rock.
Oh, he'd have been fine.
You would have. Matt is frozen with a great picture. Holy moly! He looks like he's meditating right now.
He's using the force. He's using the force.
Using this. That looks like a skin flute pose.
Jesus.
Anyways, I guess it's just Mike and I for now.
But
do you think Jason was a better bassist than Cliff Burton?
Oh hell no.
Was he better for the band?
Yes, he was better for the band because he, aside from the fanboy part, he just did whatever they told him to do, and he was there for them no matter what, rain or shine, sickness. The dude never missed a show. He was always early, had the material memorized. Like he was the consummate professional, and that's what they needed. He was
how do we add him? That's crazy. He can come back in, I think.
Sure.
He was an energizing force. Hey,
he was the guy he was the glue, right?
Yeah.
And then as time went on, he wasn't allowed to do anything. The story is we don't need to rehash that story because I feel for him, but hey, everybody's got issues and Metallica, I guess, worked it out somehow. And Jason seems pretty happy. He retired at 40 basically. And
well, do you like any of his new stuff, Jason Newsted?
his solo album's not bad. It's okay.
Yeah.
He's not as good a songwriter as Hetfield.
He's definitely not a good singer either. Like, his singing is fine, but it's just
he's a good backup singer, right? He's a good guy to have live. And he's intense. And I think, like, he was almost a third Alpha too later on because he was so intense. He wanted to get his point across. And I think he started stepping on some toes.
Oh boy, what's going on here?
Oh boy.
What's
going on?
There he is.
Okay. StreamYard's having some issues. This is I just had the error message that said it's a StreamYard fault. So for everybody watching us, do we want to keep going with this for the next 50 minutes?
Let's see.
Just ignore the error and see how this happens.
We're still streaming.
We'll keep hammering this out. If this persists, because this did do this when I wasn't looking, making my coffee and dropping a kid off, we will pull the plug, pretend this never happened, and start again in the near future. Sure. Anyway, so we were talking about Cliff Burton.
Yeah.
And the missing element there.
Yeah.
I think it's the melodic tones that you see throughout Ride and throughout Master of Puppets. Those are gone.
Yep.
Gone.
Well, who wrote the intro to Fight Fire with Fire? Oh, right. Cliff Burton.
Yeah.
That was all him. So, right? Like, those guys aren't capable of stuff like that.
No, and it shows. So I wonder what the rest of the albums would look like, other than the fact that, we probably wouldn't have one, which was really a trigger for the Black Album. And we also would not have And Justice for All, which for me is an upside, but I'm already going to get...
Justice would have been a lot different, right? It would have been...
The bass lines would have been completely different.
Well, the whole sound would have been different.
Yeah, it would have been...
Hold on. It wouldn't be a therapy album anymore either.
No. Yeah, but most of the songs were already written for it, right? So I think
there was some stuff written before Cliff died too. So it was. I think the album would have largely been close, but
because they were working on the album while they were touring for the Master of Puppets tour, right? So they were writing songs on the bus, and in between they had a whole bunch of riffs already there, right?
Yeah.
The tone of ultimate sorrow and sadness wouldn't have been there, right? But I think. Yeah, like it would have been the more interesting question is if Cliff Burton was still alive, what would the Black Album sound like? Like because I think that would have been way different than what you got.
Well, I think
absolutely.
If Cliff Burton was still alive, yeah, because they wouldn't have gone in that direction. They would have gone they would have gone in a more progressive metal direction. I think.
I don't know because Cliff was a huge like Skinner guy and the way sort of Metallica went in the 90s, that was like Cliff's wheelhouse. Skinner, a little bit of Rush, a little bit of,
Yeah, but he was all about the complexity of music and the complexity of like weaving together all the intricate parts. Like Justice for All has some of the most intricate passages of music Metallica's ever done.
Yeah.
Like if you just look musically, regardless of how Matt feels about how it was recorded and the sound of it, if you look at just musically and the notes and what they put together, it's some of their best songwriting that they've ever done is on And Justice for All. From a musical theory standpoint, right? Like everything works so well together. You hear all four instruments, the voice, the two guitars, or five, I guess, the voice, the two guitars, the drums, the bass, maybe you don't hear the bass on the album, but when you hear it live, it all just synergistically works together. So that's my opinion, but I actually think it's their best songwriting that they've ever done is for Injustice for All. And that's massively influenced by Cliff Burton. And then they absolutely simplified all of their songwriting. They went to one riff songs right after, for the most part. After Injustice, once they hit the Black Album, they they have one riff and they're like, let's double down on this riff. And I think that's why a lot of people fell off the Metallica train in the Black Album, because they were pissed that the growth that they saw them going through Ride, Master, and Injustice totally stopped.
Yeah.
And it has to be Cliff Burton's influence or lack of from that point on, honestly.
Actually, it's funny. I watched an interview with Lars Ulrich back in, this was like 1990, 91, before the Black Album.
Yeah.
And they were in the studio. It was a Much Music thing. I don't know. Whatever. That's not the point. But he was talking about the change of what Seb was just talking about, how those 3 records were largely the same, and they wanted to start they weren't happy with how they sounded, or he wasn't happy with how all of them sounded. He just and he even pointed out Master of Puppets in particular, like he's like, I don't like the way that album sounds, blah 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 blah. And he's like, we're really gunning to change things up and get a full rounded sound. It's just like, wow, like, right, like it's what they wanted. It's what they wanted to write simple.
It's what
songs.
Lars wanted.
Sure. Well,
and I think James is just there to write riffs and put together songs, right?
Yeah.
And the other 2 members were not an influence on that, right?
No.
So if you throw in Cliff Burton as an opposing influence, you have to find a happy medium, right?
He was the big brother of the band too, right?
Exactly.
But anyways, we're gonna beat this to death. No,
we are. We'll get to Rob Trujillo some other time.
I don't. So who cares?
Yeah.
What?
Okay, let's.
He's got as much. He has as much voice as Jason does. It is whatever. It is what it is.
I think he fits better, but you're right. He's not. There's not a whole lot of influence there. Anybody, boys? I kicked it off with the obvious. So what do you guys got?
Do you want me to go? Okay. I have a couple, but let's start with this one. Dave Grohl. He wasn't the original drummer for Nirvana.
No.
So so Chad Channing, I think, was recorded Bleach, I think, the first album.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you don't think of Nirvana without Dave Grohl.
No.
Most people don't even know that there was another drummer in the band. So
I read that in his autobiography recently, and I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So I just think he's the 3rd member that made that Triforce of grunge what it is. Yeah.
Go Zelda.
They also had aside from Dave, they also had a second guitarist at the beginning as well, who went on to be an Army Ranger and a legit badass. I just saw a whole thing on this the other day, but Dave is the obvious pick here because Kurt is iconic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he is basically a musical deity at this point.
Yep.
Right. He's up there with Hendrix. He's up there with Joplin.
He's in the 27 club.
There's no denying about that. He's up there with Marley. Dave, however, came in, fit the band well, was right there through it. I mean, my Nirvana one was Losing Kurt, which was obviously it killed the band. Chris never did anything major after Nirvana, and Dave went on, and he is now a current musical deity. Like, everybody knows Dave Grohl.
Yeah,
everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen,
he seems like a hell of a nice guy, right? He just seems like a really cool cat.
And he's all about the music too, right? Like, I mean, there's the thing where I think he broke his leg and then came back and played the show, or just sat in a chair and
sat in the throne. And finished the tour, man.
Yeah.
Yep. So also was in the book, his autobiography, The Storyteller by Dave Grohl. Highly recommended. It's not a thick book. It is a really nice read. I still have to finish it off, but I sat there and I read it for hours and hours, and I think I have about 50 pages left that I just haven't got around to yet because life gets busy. But you're absolutely right. Replacing Dave Grohl was, it was huge for music, period.
You mean Chad Channing?
Yeah, getting Dave Grohl replacing Channing was huge because Dave's sound on the drums, that's really a catalyst for the Nirvana sound. The bass and the guitar weren't exactly mind-blowing, off the charts new, but that the way Dave dealt with the drums in that was phenomenal. Like, you think it Smells Like Teen Spirit, and it starts, it has a couple little riffs there, and then it just kicks in with the drums
Mhm.
and everybody knows that, chugga, 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 and that's where it goes.
Do you think
But-
having a drummer for a producer helped Dave? Probably. It's an obvious question or obvious statement because
Yeah.
Rich Vig is like an amazing drummer in his own right.
Yep.
And helped
Yeah,
Dave harness
I
that
think
energy.
so. There's a couple of videos talking about how he came up with some of the drum beats, and he had a lot of influence from, you know, like the
70s
disco
funk
era,
bands.
basically. Yeah,
Mhm.
70 funk bands, yeah.
yeah. And if
Industrial
you
bands.
actually look at his drum kit, it's so basic.
Yes.
Like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not a big. It's got you got your one tom, a snare, or maybe two toms, a snare, and a bass drum, and then a couple of cymbals. Like there's nothing extravagant
fancy,
about it,
yeah.
right? And he made I'm not gonna say simple, but he served the music that was being written with
Mhm.
the drums.
Mhm.
Like it wasn't overly complicated because it didn't need to be, and it didn't have to be, and it shouldn't have been,
No.
right? So, but yeah, like there's the infamous thing where he was playing guitarist and Kurt Cobain goes to the bassist, is like, dude, he's a better guitarist than I am.
Yeah.
Yep.
And,
Oh, yeah.
and that's true. And that's, I think, one of the key elements of Dave is he does play multiple
Yeah.
instruments. He can
Yeah.
play guitar. He can play bass.
He can
recorded-
sing. Yeah.
You read the book, and there's a whole chapter on him recording the first Foo Fighters album. He used what he could to get some studio time, and he hammered it all out. He's like, I'm doing guitars today. And he's dropping the guitar, and he's picking up the bass, and he's recording the bass track. Then he's dropping that. Then he's doing the drum tracks. Then he's going back, and he's doing another song. And that's why he did it, with the exception of one song, and I can't remember which one it was on that first album, where he had a guitarist buddy that had stopped by the studio. He said, well, do you want to help me out? Like,
Yeah.
Dave's musical IQ and I can't remember, I lost the word I was thinking of, but his ability to play so many other instruments
Mhm.
really, I think, helped him do exactly what you said, Seb, is fit into that slot where what does the song need, not what
Yeah.
do I want to do.
Yeah.
What does the
Yeah.
song need?
That's the real measure of a true musician, is how do I serve the song with these instruments? Because it's all about serving the song instead of
Both.
And going back to the Metallica conversation, that's why I think Kirk Hammett is a better fit for Metallica, because he's always about serving the song, where Dave Mustaine was always about, I want the solo to scream, which is fine, but I think the best balance of that was probably someone like Dimebag Darrell, who was a great guitarist but also served the song. But sorry, that's kind of going off topic here. But
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I may be on my list somewhere. No, and that's exactly it. Is, I mean, that one change took a Seattle club garage band trying to make it, really pushed them further down the line.
yeah, I
Right?
don't think
They got it
Nirvana
just
would
in
have
time for
been
the second album, and
Yeah.
off it went.
Mhm.
I don't think Nirvana would have been the pioneer of grunge without Dave Grohl, for sure.
No.
He is the backbone of their sound, basically. So
Absolutely. Mike, what do you got for us, buddy?
Well, I'm going to stay on the Dave Grohl train because we're talking about it. And for a musician to lose one best friend in a band, to lose a second, which
I know where
Taylor
you're going.
was
Too
like,
soon.
well, no, but it's, I
No,
think
keep going. Keep going.
Taylor was, obviously I never met the guy, but all this the footage you saw of him, he seemed awesome, and the friendship between him and Dave was completely genuine, and they loved each other like brothers. So when he passed, like, I'm not a huge Foo Fighters fan. Like, I love Dave Grohl. I think he is the coolest guy ever, and same with Taylor. But I don't sit and listen to the Foos. I don't put I'm going to put on Wasting Light today and blah blah blah. But the respect I have for them as a band and for carrying the torch for rock and roll. So when Taylor died, it was a huge, like, the Foo Fighters, like, they disappeared. Like, it was like just like, holy shit, what?
Yeah, they turtled.
They turtled. What's Dave gonna do? Because the only drummer that is as good as Dave is Taylor, right? Like, you can't tell the two apart. They're just that identical of talent wise. So when they came back, well, actually, the tribute shows. Did you guys watch any of the footage from those tribute shows?
no.
I didn't.
No, there's some really cool shit. And lots of cool guys, and like Wolfgang Van Halen came out and they played a bunch of stuff. Blah blah blah. But for the Foos to come back, and I figured they'd come back for one more record and do one tour with whoever on drums, which they're doing. But I don't think they're done. Like, but here we are. It's so sad. It's such a It's a hard listen. Like, it's like lyrically and just tonally, it's a real hard listen. A really good tribute to Taylor in the last couple of songs. One about because his mom died like just after Taylor passed. So he lost the two biggest influences in his life within a couple of months of each other.
Well, and then also, one of his best friends from back home also passed away a few years before that. Again, I'm referencing this book because we're talking about Dave, but he really hits hard on Taylor and talking about a road trip they took from, I think they started in LA. They stopped at a gas station in Barstow, but they were headed to Virginia. And they made a detour south because Dimebag and Vinny from Pantera said, stop by our strip club. So they get to this Dallas strip club. Dave left his wallet in Barstow at the gas station.
Oops.
Here's the kicker to that. So they didn't get in the strip club after all this detour, but decades later, he's randomly in some, I think it was like a Venice Beach surf shop or something like that. And the lady recognized him. Was like, are you Dave Grohl? He's like, yeah. Yeah, I am. He's like, okay, autographs, photos, whatever. And she's like, my parents have your wallet sitting in their gas station
amazing.
From 20 years ago. He actually got his wallet back. It had the money in it and everything.
Wow.
Nothing was missing. It actually did return to him. And that was all in a road trip with Taylor. And speaking to Taylor's personality, there's two documentary series that I can point out that really show him. One is, I can't remember which series it was. It might be Behind the Music, but on Alanis Morissette, because he was Alanis's drummer for the Jagged Little Pill.
He was,
and
that's a great documentary, by the way. Great insight into her life.
Oh, absolutely,
who she is. Yeah, it's amazing.
And then the Foo Fighters, Sonic Highways, which is really hard to get right now. I've looked and looked and looked. It's not streaming anywhere I can find.
It's not on HBO or Crave.
No, really? not anymore.
Oh,
that's exactly where I went, and it is a great documentary. And you see Dave, and they're adapting to different musical styles from all over the country. They pick a city. I think they do 8 cities.
Yeah, they pick a studio and go to it. And
yeah. So there's Seattle, there's Washington, there's Nashville, and they all pick up a different vibe. There's New Orleans, and Dave and Taylor are in there like dirty shirts. I mean, the rest of the band's in there as well. But seeing Dave interact with Taylor in that, you really get a sense of how they were. And Mike's hit it exactly on the head. And I think that even if you haven't seen it, if you've seen anything with those two, you really get a sense of they were tight.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it's always the question is like, why did Dave Grohl decide to become the front man of Foo Fighters? You know, cause he was always known as a drummer. And then there's this guy going, like, I know he's a phenomenal. Okay, go for it.
According to his book, because he needed something to do.
Yeah.
So he
needed something to do. He needed to keep busy. He needed to keep making music because he didn't want to end up being that guy from Nirvana, which I mean, I haven't followed his career and I could be wrong, but that's Chris.
Kind of like he went into politics for a while, and he put out a record with Matt Cameron from Soundgarden called The Third Secret. It's really good. It's some local Seattle guys.
There's also the psychological effect too of like, I can't pick up a bass anymore and play because it's just too hard, because all the memories of being in Nirvana come and I can't get over that. Like that's a possibility too. So to change your career path is almost trying to heal or get away or not deal with the memories of it's just too hard to play music again.
It definitely speaks to different coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
And if not for the fact that Nirvana burned so brightly and became so iconic in such a short amount of time, much like the Beatles, Nirvana could be known as that band Dave was in before Foo Fighters.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it was like what, 4 years he was in the band. That's it.
4 years, I think 3 studio albums, and then just jamming everything together, plus the unplugged. I mean, they burned hot, they burned bright. It very much like the Beatles. They changed the culture, they changed the landscape. And Dave, since 1995, so we're almost 30 years deep here, has been Foo Fighters.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're selling out stadiums. And I don't know if you've seen it, but you can look it up on YouTube. Dave's got a hell of a sense of humor, and he called a fan up to sing a Michael Bublé song, and there's like a 5-minute clip, and the fan he actually pulled up one night was actually Michael Bublé that flew in just to do that joke.
That's hilarious.
It was fantastic. The only downside is the title of the video is Michael Bublé with Foo Fighters. If they had changed that title to something that where you didn't stooge it off, you didn't realize it was Bublé until after he starts singing, because you're like, oh, he even looks like boobs. Oh, it is boobs.
Yeah, but you want a clickbait title though, right? So you put Michael Bublé in your title, people are like, click, I want to see this.
All right.
Yeah,
remember when he put that kid up on stage and the kid played Enter Sandman, and they're and he's like, oh, and he was actually really good. Yeah.
Honestly, he had a kid come up and do the drummer thing too recently. So, I mean, if you were to tell me that Taylor Hawkins is going to be replaced by some 13-year-old girl that Dave found at a random city, I'd be like, that's Dave right there. That's
hey man,
that's how that's going to work.
Korn played some shows with Trujillo's son, and he was like 13 or 14, I think.
Yep, you did.
When he played bass for them, so it can be done.
And he's in. Trujillo's son is now back in Suicidal Tendencies, as I understand it.
Is he?
Yeah,
they just played with them. They played with Metallica last week.
Yeah,
nice.
So I just saw a photo of that, and it's like Robert Trujillo taking in his son's show with Suicidal Tendencies. I'm like, oh god, he ended up taking his dad's place in the band.
Absolutely.
And like right there, I'm not a big Suicidal Tendencies fan. I couldn't pull a song out of my hat if I wanted to.
Nope.
And I kind of do right now, but I can't. But to have your son take over in the band you were in years later, that's pretty rad.
Yeah.
Right?
Passing of the torch. All right, Matt, what do you got for us? Oh, sorry, Mike, you have another comment?
It's fine. We're
no,
done.
go ahead.
No, it's just Taylor's son. He played drums on these tribute shows.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah.
He's a killer drummer.
And you know what? That
like
would be on brand too.
16, 17, looks just like daddy, and he plays just like dad. And it's kind of like the whole Jason Bonham from when John Led Zeppelin, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I remember that.
I can't remember his son's name, but he's an awesome, awesome drummer.
His last name is Hawkins.
Thanks, Tibbs.
All right, Matt, what do you got?
Well,
James is first.
A very successful band, and you might be able to tell from my hat, even though the logo for the actual band name is on the side. It's a very successful band. They had to replace their lead singer, and they found a very successful lead singer to come in. Rage Against the Machine replaced, for lack of a better term, Zach De La Rocha with Chris Cornell.
Yep.
So is that technically the same band though?
It is. It's
because they changed the name.
It's just they've swapped out a key member.
Yeah, that's fair.
This really leans into the idea behind this show is they literally became a very successful different band.
Yeah.
You still hear elements of Rage in there with, Tom's guitar playing in particular, but the music is 100% different.
Mm-hmm.
Chris and Zach are two completely different vocalists. Zach is a rapper that if he, needs to, he can pull out a couple of notes here or there, and there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me sideways on that. Love Rage Against the Machine. Love Audioslave. Love Chris Cornell. Chris Cornell is one of the best singers we've seen on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a
range is
badass rock singer. Yeah. But the whole theme of the band changed, right? Like once Audioslave became a band, it's not about political statements and about, it's more personalized. Each of the songs are more tender, I guess, to more of a personal journey, right? So, like definitely an upgrade on the singer for sure.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'd go upgrade because
come on, I don't think
it's
come on.
It's a like Matt said, a more tender. It's more accessible. That's the word.
You cannot compare Chris Cornell with Zach De La Rocha in terms of singing ability. Come on, guys. Chris Cornell is one of the greatest rock singers ever to live in this space.
We're not talking ability.
They're different though.
Yeah.
Keep going, Mike.
Different. It's like Zach's intensity and Zach's like political. Like, sure, Tom was. They were all into the politics, but Zach, I think that was his thing. Was the, all that political stuff that Rage was. That's what they were. Chris was not. Chris was not that guy. Chris was tortured. Chris had drug problems and all sorts of issues, and it came through in his music in a real emotional way. And the other three Rage guys really leaned into that for those 3 records.
I guess
Tom is also very political as well, but
yes. Absolutely.
I think he's more of a folky version of that. If you listen to any of his Night Watchman stuff, it's acoustic. It's much more folky. It's different. It's comparing Zach De La Rocha and Chris Cornell is like comparing Fife Dog to Steven Tyler. They're both fantastic, top of their game, but their vocal styles, their frontman styles, they're completely different. Completely different. And Mike hit the nail on the head by taking the political aspect, the anger aspect out of Rage Against the Machine and adding in the personal touches of Chris Cornell, and Chris Cornell's stuff in Audioslave is still different than his stuff from Soundgarden. He had evolved himself.
Yep.
It's that exact thing where it's one member of a band has changed and the whole band changed.
Yep.
They changed the name. I mean, you still hear elements of both Soundgarden and Rage Against the Machine in Audioslave, but they are mixed and they are melded, and some things are not as potent.
You almost had to change the name because the entire directive of the band has shifted, right? Like, and you got to assume that Zach was kind of the guiding and driving force behind the Rage directive, with political statements and whatnot. And then when Chris Cornell joined Audition, they realized we have something different here, something just as good but different. And so I'm like, changing the name was probably the best thing they could have done, honestly, because it makes sense, right? Like, it's not the same band. It isn't. So why keep the Rage name when it's not Rage?
And if you think about the name, Soundgarden, sound, audio, Rage Against the Machine, lots of political stuff, lots of anger, lots of telling us that we are slaves. So even mix it, even when you break the names down, you see that the band has come together,
amalgamated both.
It's an amalgamation, and just by taking sort of the anger out of the Rage name and going with an aspect they talk about a lot, really shows the shift with the other 3. And that's, I mean, Rage was touring until Zach blew out his Achilles last year. Unfortunately, we will never get
Aaron Rodgers.
We'll never get a true Audioslave tour again. And I mean, losing Cornell was just devastating to music.
Yeah, that was a tough one. That was because him and Eddie Vedder, they made it through. They survived. They're
almost.
They're the only 2 left standing, and then Chris got on some bad sleeping pills that made him suicidal. Like, it was Ambien that sort of gives you the suicidal thoughts, and you just did it, right?
I mean, you see it all the time in other aspects. You see it in athletes, you see it in movie stars. They're trying to get off one thing and they substitute it with another that's supposed to be safe, right? And then it's like all of a sudden gone.
Yep, it's gone. So his poor kids, his poor wife, whatever.
Okay, so staying with this topic of singers that come in that completely change the band. I guess, are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Sir, move on,
please.
Sammy Hagar replaces David Lee Roth in Van Halen. Completely changes the band sound because they made it.
I don't think Sammy changed it. That was all Eddie.
But the new singer comes in and then their sound is completely different. They've moved from like a glam hard rock 80s, let's talk about banging girls and drinking, to a more tender,
a little more
personalized, more mature band, right? So
the songs Eddie was putting out were, even on 1984, were much different than all previous 5 records. It was less party songs. And Dave, I've looked into this a little bit. Dave's in He's an eclectic cat. He's a strange man. And just to put it, if you ever listen to him on Joe Rogan, he's out there,
He's
man.
still the same though.
Yeah, he's still the same guy, and he left Van Halen and lived his life, right? Whatever.
Because it was shifting. The direction of the band was shifting, and it didn't work anymore with him.
No,
with David
and
Lee
Eddie
Roth.
was more synthesizer, more keyboards. He wasn't as much into guitar anymore. And even 1984, as great as a record that is, it's like 70% keyboards, and it's awesome.
Yeah,
and then you're right when Sammy comes in. It's, okay, now all of a sudden the lyrics have meaning, and it's not.
There's a vulnerability to the voice that David Lee Roth could have never provided, right?
Never.
So it almost needed to happen, and they found the perfect guy to do it. I mean, the better singer to replace, a Van Halen singer was Gary Cherone, but no, just kidding.
Well, Gary had the range. In Gary's defense, he had the range, right? That album sucks.
That was a failed experiment, though.
It was.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, Gary Cherone was the lead singer for Extreme, who replaced Sammy Hagar in Van Halen. What was the last album they did, or I think
it was Van Halen 3.
It wasn't very good.
Really late in their career. Yeah. So I think Mike hit on something there that's interesting. Much like we were talking about with replacing Mustaine and Metallica, replacing Dave with Sammy seems to have opened up that gateway where there's no longer another alpha in the band.
Right. Eddie had it all to himself. Yeah.
Instead of,
but it's his band.
And I kind of picture it like you ever take driving lessons and it's those cars with the steering wheel and the pedals on both sides.
Yes.
That's kind of what it seems like when you have two alphas. Either it's going to go really, really badly because they're both fighting each other.
Yeah.
Or
it's going off the rails, man, and you're driving off a cliff.
Or you're in sync, and for as long as you're in sync, you're doing amazing.
Yep.
And that seems to be, to Mike's point, what happened with Van Halen.
It worked for a while, and then Dave.
Because the mission statement was the same in the early part of Van Halen, and then when Eddie kind of wanted to shift the way the band sounded and the music they wrote, it wasn't received well, I don't think, by David Lee Roth. No. So the void started to happen there.
Look who Dave's first solo record, his guitar player was Steve Vai. So like it goes to tell you what Dave was into. It was just flash.
That's not a bad guitarist to have.
No. But it's a little interesting tidbit. Back before they released Van Halen 1, Ted Templeman, their producer, wanted them to replace Dave before their first record with Sammy in 78.
Really?
Yeah. And
so he's like, this isn't the guy for you.
Yeah, no, this guy sucks.
Maybe they knew something. But they wanted that frontman energy though.
Dave was perfect for those early records. With that music, the party music, they're all drunk all the time.
But that was the style of music in the early 80s, right? So
no, not just drunk. Yeah. I'm sure
if you've ever read Valerie Bertinelli's biography, it definitely sounds like they were Pablo Escobar's #1 customer.
Yeah, probably. It was snowing all the time.
Eric Clapton wrote a song about it.
Right.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
We got a bunch to go through, so let's get moving here because I have like a huge list. So Mike, go ahead if you have another one there.
So Pink Floyd, this has happened twice to them.
Oh, good call.
And I'm not going the Sid Barrett way because there's lots of conflicting ways to go about the whole Sid Barrett thing. The dude had some mental problems, and psychedelia and drugs got in the way, and they brought in a stable cat. They brought in David Gilmour. But I want to talk when Roger Waters, because he was their principal songwriter from Dark Side on. And after The Wall, the keyboard player left because Roger, if you watch the interview with the guy, he seems like a class A asshole. And well, he really does. He just seems like a fucking prick. So
and he wants to drive. This has been a reoccurring theme is he wants to drive.
He wants both steering wheels on both sides and all 4 pedals for his 2 feet. He wants the car to himself, and that's it. So in 85, he decides to leave and sue David Gilmour and Nick Mason, the drummer, their 2 remaining original members, and telling them, fuck you, you can't use Pink Floyd's name. He loses. So Gilmour Gilmour decides, him and Mason, and I think Richard Wright, the keyboard player, came back for a momentary lapse in reason, which came out in 87. They were selling out stadiums, and Roger was playing clubs.
Ouch.
And arguably you could say Roger's a better songwriter than Gilmour. I disagree. I think Gilmour's a fantastic songwriter.
You can't think, well, okay, because I have actually the Sid Barrett David Gilmour replacement, or David Gilmour replacing Sid Barrett on my list, and so we can talk about both of them, I guess.
Sure,
you can't think of Pink Floyd without David Gilmour. You just cannot.
Not.
Right? And if you listen to Sid Barrett stuff, like none of that stuff is good. Listen, I challenge anyone to listen to the first 2 Pink Floyd albums with Sid Barrett as their vocalist.
Hyper the Gates of Dawn is amazing. Come on, what are you talking about?
Tell me if you find a good song on any of those 2 albums.
Well, there's a couple of good songs. Arnold Lane's good. Arnold Lane's good.
Fucking weird.
Well, it's like hold on. Psychedelic.
Weird does not necessarily mean bad.
I did not resonate at all with any of the first 2 albums.
There you go. Because I came to an epiphany, because I know we argue about music all the time, and I had this. I came to this thing the other day and said, there's no such thing as a bad song. It's whether it grabs you or not. That's what makes it good for you, is if the song grabs you. Like
no, there's bad songs.
No, there's not. Because if songs grab me that don't grab you, doesn't mean you can say it sucks, but it really doesn't suck. It's just you don't resonate with it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, we'll go back to the whole Inamorata thing. That song, it made me cry. Whatever. Right?
Yeah, but that's a good song.
Okay, man, it's wrong. I'm not going to get my point across.
No, I'm just trolling you at this point.
I think all songs are going to grab you. It's just at sometimes, and this is to Seb's point, because I don't disagree with him either. Sometimes it grabs you in a place where you want to go to the authorities and show them on the doll where the song touched you.
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
And then other times the doll isn't around because you don't need it, and it's just like the song. It was like a passing glance, and that's it, right? But anyways, that's sort of where I derailed this completely.
That's fine.
That's absolutely fine.
But I just had this sort of thing with, I don't know, musically.
But let me ask you this: did Pink Floyd become better after Roger Waters left?
I don't think so.
Because it's the amalgamation of the 2 alphas that made Pink Floyd what Pink Floyd is.
I think they were past their prime by the time Roger left. Like Momentary Lapse is a Gilmour solo record. It's got the Pink Floyd name on it, but it's a Gilmour record, and it's much different. Roger was much like Zach De La Rocha. He was very politically charged, and he wrote very sort of inflammatory lyrics and stuff like that, like just the wall, animals. All that is all politics. And Gilmour is a little more Chris Cornell-y, where it's kind of not down the middle, but it's it's easier to accept.
It's more soulful and tender.
It's more soulful. His guitar, whatever, the guitar playing is another conversation.
Hey, man, he gave us one of the greatest guitar solos of all time.
Comfortably Numb. And that's a Gilmour song. Yeah. That was a Gilmour song. So after Dark Side, they decided to let Roger write everything. He said, this guy's a freight train, and we're going to give him 90% of every record and let him just go.
You can't argue with that, because Dark Side was on the Billboard Top 100 for over 13 years.
Yeah, for 1,000 years.
13 years.
So
that's a hard conversation to have about
is Floyd better without Roger? Hell no. But they were more successful without Roger. But I think that's nostalgia talking, right?
But there's no argument to be made about having a sense of peace in your band and calm. Like if you can't get along with your band members, if you can't stand your fellow band members, what's the point of even playing? Because it's just gonna, at some point, something's gonna happen and it's gonna destroy the band. Right?
You got to remember that this is also like going to work.
Yeah,
at some point, if you have a coworker that you can't fucking stand enough, you're leaving. I've had that coworker.
Yeah.
It's been a boss a couple of times. It's been a long-term employee a couple of times. It's just like, you know what? I am done with your shit. Yeah. Now I want to move on. I want to try to get one more in here. However, I'm going to throw this out here.
Yes.
A friend of mine was a roadie for Pink Floyd for a while. So maybe if we want to sit down and do a Pink Floyd show one day, I can reach out and see what that. He was a laser technician on tour with them for a while.
Oh, amazing.
So that would be... I can maybe pull a string, and then, because he's got some really rad stories about being on tour with Floyd. But we'll discuss that. And if we decide to do a Pink Floyd show, I'll hit him up and see what we can do.
I'd love to. That'd be amazing.
Yep.
All right, Matt, go.
Do it.
Okay, let's see. So I got a list here, and I'm not quite sure where I want. I got a couple. You know what? I'm going to go with the one that is probably going to set everybody out there off.
All right.
Adam Lambert and Queen. What the actual fuck is that?
Well,
It's
it's an obvious money grab. We get it, right? And they're carrying. It's okay. You can almost compare. This is gonna make sense. This is gonna. I think
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
He's gonna.
boy.
He's already getting
boy.
beat up for it.
I think you can compare. I don't know if I can even say it. Compare that collaboration with what Pantera is now. It's a tribute.
You know what? And that was the other one I was thinking about mentioning. So
it's a tribute. That's what Lambert is. He's flamboyant. He is the embodiment of what Freddie was, right? Except with a lot more makeup. Fine, whatever. He's a fantastic singer. I'd go see. I wouldn't pay the money if I got free tickets to go see that. I'd be all in because it'd be probably a great show. But Pantera is much the same. It's not Pantera. It's the Phil Anselmo and Rex Brown tribute experience, or the Pantera experience.
I'll agree with that.
They got
and they make no bones about it. They make no bones about it. Not Pantera.
I like the fact that you compared these two, because these are the two that I was really looking at as I was staring at my notes, because this is a completely different aspect from what we're talking about previously, where the band has gone on truly. These are touring acts now. They are more tributes, right? Adam Lambert is a fill-in singer.
Absolutely.
But here's the thing with Adam Lambert: he never sought out to be the lead singer for Queen. He went on. He
was on American Idol.
And he did Bohemian Rhapsody, I believe, was his song. And Queen was like, "Hey, this guy is good." I think Queen went to him and said, "Hey, how would you feel about being the lead singer of Queen?" And he's like, "What?" So
it was very much like that Mark Wahlberg movie Rockstar, except
which is based on a true story, by the way.
Based on Judas Priest,
yeah,
based on Judas Priest. And to the reason I brought it up, we're not going to sit down in the studio and do a whole lot of extra stuff.
No.
It's the same as with Charlie Benanti and Zakk Wylde. Those two guys have enough going on. They don't need to sit down and try and cut another Pantera record.
Well, Queen hasn't written any material after Freddie Mercury passed, right?
Not.
Freddie Mercury passed, right? So it is essentially a tribute act in honoring the sound of Queen with Freddie Mercury. And what better guy to do it than Adam Lambert, who can sound just like Freddie Mercury? He has the chops. So I'm okay with it. Like,
I think if I remember right, back in the day, I think Queen was on American Idol, like Brian May and Roger Taylor were on, and I think they picked songs for them and they performed with whoever was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was. I think because me and the wife used to watch Idol all the time, and I think they played with Lambert live on TV, and it was just like, holy shit! And then I think they realized, like, we got
something here.
We got something here, and he's been in the band. Well, not in the band, but he's been with the band.
But he also does his own solo work too, doesn't he, Adam Lambert?
I think so. I think so.
I mean, he's got a long career ahead of him. Queen, they're on the back nine of life in general. And let's be honest here, touring's where the money is for most musicians now. I mean, the record industry has been notorious for a long, long time about finding a way to fuck over the artists. Their newest way is they're going to pay pennies for streaming, but streaming gets it out there everywhere. There is no point for a band that can sell out arenas regularly or stadiums regularly to drop. There's no incentive to drop new music.
Well, that's why the new thing
do your tour.
The new thing is like hyper short songs that are like 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes long, because you get more streams out of it because it's only 2 minutes, right? So that's why all these like mumble rappers and hip hop artists have like 2 and 3 minute songs, so that you listen to them over and over again and you get volume of views and volumes of clicks. So it pays more for Spotify and Apple Music than listening to a 14-minute song. So
hey, how about Long in the Tooth? The Rolling Stones have a new record coming out. Going off subject.
What?
Yeah, well, not really, because the Stones have replaced a bunch of band members, but we'll have to get into that later.
Yeah, they got in the studio in like January and they did a record. They're like, yeah, we're getting old. We need to do something. Lady Gaga's on it. There's a bunch of people on it, and they got new singles out. It's for 80-year-old guys. It's pretty rocking, man. Like,
I heard one yesterday. I think they played it on the Fox.
Is it angry or angry or mad or something shit like that?
I don't remember which one it was. It just said, here's something new from the Rolling Stones.
And you're like,
it didn't
what?
offend me. I mean, I didn't get to hear the whole thing because I finished what I was doing and I had to get into a noisy forklift. But
Is it Painted Black or Honky Tonk Woman or Tumbling Dice? No,
It's a good song, Painted Black.
Well, we could talk about him too, Brian Jones, but Stones had a lot of guys they've replaced.
Yeah,
actually.
Ronnie Wood replaced.
He didn't actually. It was Mick Taylor replaced Brian Jones, and then Ronnie Wood replaced Mick Taylor.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
But Ronnie's been in the band for 250 years.
Hey, speaking of Pantera, did you know that Phil Anselmo isn't the original singer for Pantera?
No.
Yes.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah, it was some other guy, Terry something.
Terry
Yeah, back when
Blaze.
they-
Yeah,
and they
when they
were-
were like glam
when they're
band.
glam, yeah.
I didn't know that Phil did one of their glam power metal albums.
Yeah,
one
yeah.
right before
So
Cowboys?
The one right before
technically
Cowboys.
Yeah.
Cowboys is the first Pantera album.
Yeah.
Right, but he did
Pantera
an
We
album
Know and
before that. Yeah.
I think it was. I was on YouTube. I was like, "Oh, cool! This is like some." And man, Phil, that dude could reach some high notes, man. Holy shit!
I'm just gonna throw out two guitarists real quick that replaced other guitarists and made them better. One would be Zakk Wylde replacing Jake E. Lee from Ozzy Osbourne, because Randy Rhoads only did 2 albums with Ozzy, but when you think of Ozzy and a lot of the iconic riffs that Ozzy had, other than the first 2 albums with Zach Baby, and the guy that can never pronounce his last name, but from the Red Hot Chili Peppers,
John Frusciante.
John Frusciante, yeah. He when you think of Red Hot Chili Peppers,
Which guy?
okay, so when they first replaced him, because their original guitarist died from a heroin overdose, what was his name? Slovak, I think. Hele Slovak. So he came in and Chad Smith came in at the same time. So they replaced both the drummer and the guitarist that passed away originally in like 88, I think, or 89.
Okay.
It might be later. But yeah, he keeps coming back. But when you think of
he's back again now.
he's back again. But when you think of Chili's sound, like all the iconic Chili
Frusciante,
song,
man.
it's Frusciante, right?
Yeah.
He's got such a gift on making things sound so simple, but try playing some of his shit.
Oh,
It's
God,
not easy, man.
No. That dude's got like 30 solo records or something crazy number. Like he just puts albums out all the time. It's just like nonstop.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
But I think we got another show in this at least down
For
the line.
sure.
We haven't
we do.
touched on some major bands. We haven't.
can even
touched
do
on
it again
Alice
next
in
week.
Chains. We haven't talked about Black Sabbath. We haven't talked about the Misfits, and we haven't talked about AC/DC.
Nope. That
Or Iron Maiden or the
Iron
Sex
Maiden.
Pistols.
Yes, absolutely. So
Priest.
I think
Judas Priest. Yeah.
I think we got
Megadeth,
a
really.
lot of water in this well to pull up still.
Yes.
However,
Eagles.
Mike is a good parent, and we don't want to ruin his record.
Nope.
Because JoJo will come down in a couple weeks and kill Sebastian.
What? Me? What? You?
She will not kill Sebastian. That'll be the last thing that would ever happen.
I love me some JoJo. She's amazing.
But I do have to go, boys.
Okay.
So,
You got to go. Mike's got to go. So thank you. Goodbye. Sorry for the technical difficulties. That, according to my computer, was on StreamYard.
Hey, we kept it afloat. It's all good. We kept it going, and then we started
I'm
bouncing in
interested
and
to
out.
see
It's
how
like,
this turns out because my computer's the one that is supposed to be recording it all.
you probably didn't get it.
Sorry for the technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's just me missing, but I'm going to find out in just a couple of minutes.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Okay.
Good
Happy
day,
rock
how
and roll.
do?
Good day, how do?
Peace.